Your fence is ruining my $1 million mountain view.
She screamed so loud the birds scattered. Bethany, the Botox-faced HOA Karen in her gleaming white Escalade, barged onto my porch at 7 a.m., slamming a lawyer's letter into my chest. Her fake nails scratched my door as she hissed,
"Tear it down today, or I'll ruin you!"
She called my late wife's memorial garden fence an eyesore killing property values, then smirked.
"You're just a sad old man who doesn't get it."
Big mistake, Bethany. Huge. This sad old man spent 40 years in aerospace engineering, and I know how to deliver a perfect, unbreakable view. 8 months later, my new 60-foot bulletproof glass fence went up, and that's when the monthly invoices started arriving at her door. You won't believe her face when she realized what it really cost. What's the pettiest revenge you've pulled on an entitled neighbor? Drop your story below. Best one gets pinned and narrated next. My name's Xavier Delacroix, and 18 months ago, I thought I'd found peace in the mountains of Colorado. Big mistake. After 40 years building rockets for Lockheed Martin, I retired to Pine Ridge Valley with my government security clearance, a workshop full of precision tools, and exactly 0 patience left for entitled neighbors. 4 acres of pristine mountain property backing up to national forest, where the only sounds should be wind through pine needles and the gentle clink of my coffee mug against Sarah's memorial garden bench. My late wife lost her cancer battle 2 years ago, and that 8-foot cedar fence protecting her rose garden was the only thing standing between me and complete breakdown. Every morning at sunrise, I'd sit surrounded by the sweet fragrance of her favorite David Austin roses, while mountain air carried the crisp scent of pine sap and memories. Those wind chimes she picked out would sing in the breeze, and for a few precious minutes, I could pretend she was still there planning her next garden expansion. Then, the McMansion from hell got built next door. Picture this. An 8,000-square-foot architectural abortion that looks like a Vegas casino had a baby with a suburban strip mall. The kind of gaudy monument to bad taste that screams, new money, no class, from every fake stone column. And driving the white Escalade with Lux Life 1 vanity plates? Bethany Cromwell, a walking advertisement for why money can't buy personality. She materialized at my door 3 days after moving in, clutching store-bought cookies like some kind of peace offering. The chemical-sweet smell of her perfume mixed with mountain air created this nauseating combination that should be illegal in Colorado. "I'm just so concerned about your adjustment to the neighborhood," she purred, those fake smile muscles working overtime while her calculating eyes kept darting to my fence. The sharp click-click-click of her acrylic nails drumming against my doorframe sounded like a countdown timer to trouble. She suggested I consider lovely landscaping that might open up the sightlines. Translation: tear down your dead wife's memorial so I can see mountains from my kitchen window. When I politely declined, explaining about Sarah's memorial garden, her plastic surgeon's masterpiece cracked for just a second. Well, the dead don't need privacy, do they? That night, I did what any good engineer does when the math doesn't add up. I researched the hell out of my problem. Public records revealed Bethany's profitable hobby. She'd systematically terrorized 4 neighbors in 3 years, forcing below-market sales through harassment campaigns, then flipping properties for 300% profit margins. Congratulations, Bethany. You just picked the wrong engineer to screw with. A week later, she returned with professional ammunition, glossy photos, legal-looking documents, the full intimidation package. The papers had that expensive smell of high-end printer toner and pure bullshit. "Multiple neighbors have expressed concerns about your fence disrupting our mountain views," she lied smoothly, sliding her propaganda across my kitchen table. "I'd be happy to pay for more appropriate landscaping." I watched her performance with the same detached interest I used to analyze rocket failure modes. The micro-expressions, the carefully calculated pauses, the way she gripped her designer handbag when I declined, knuckles going white with barely controlled rage. But it was her eyes that revealed the truth. Bethany wasn't some concerned neighbor wanting better views. She was a financial predator who'd identified her next victim and was already spending my property's profit margins in her head. What this particular predator failed to research was her target's background. 40 years solving impossible problems under impossible deadlines. Top-secret government clearance. A workshop full of precision tools and a brain trained to engineer solutions that last forever. The morning she stormed onto my porch screaming about ruining her $1 million view was the morning she signed her own financial death warrant. because Bethany Cromwell was about to learn why you never pick a fight with a grieving widower who builds things for a living, especially one with government connections and way too much time on his hands. 2 weeks later, Bethany declared war with official paperwork. A certified letter arrived demanding I appear at an emergency HOA board meeting to address my fence's violation of community visual standards. The envelope had that crisp legal smell of expensive trouble. You know, the kind of paper that costs more per sheet than most people's lunch. She'd assembled quite the presentation. Professional photographs of my fence taken from every conceivable angle, complete with red arrows pointing to visual disruption zones. The woman had literally created a PowerPoint presentation about how my dead wife's roses were destroying her property values. The meeting was held in her living room, which looked like a furniture showroom had exploded during a cocaine party. Everything white leather and chrome, with those massive fake flower arrangements that scream, "I have money but the emotional depth of a puddle." The HOA board consisted of Bethany plus 2 neighbors she'd obviously bought and paid for. Ted Morrison, a nervous little man who kept checking his phone like it might contain an escape route from his misery. Janet Hill, whose messy divorce Bethany was handling as her real estate agent. Talk about conflict of interest. "Marcus, we appreciate everything you've contributed to the neighborhood," Bethany began with that practiced real estate agent voice that could sell ice to Eskimos and make them thank her for the privilege. "But this fence situation has become problematic for multiple residents." I sat there sipping coffee from my travel mug, letting her dig her own grave one bullet point at a time. The projector hummed like an angry wasp while she displayed neighborhood property comparisons and market analysis charts that would make a Wall Street analyst weep with envy. "Property values in Pine Ridge Valley depend on maintaining our mountain vista accessibility," she continued, clicking through slides with the confidence of someone who'd never been told no in her entire privileged life. "Your fence blocks critical sightlines that define our community's premium pricing." That's when I noticed something interesting. Ted Morrison wasn't just nervous. He was sweating bullets despite the air conditioning. And Janet Hill wasn't nodding in agreement. She was sending me desperate looks like a hostage blinking out Morse code. Years ago, during a particularly nasty contract dispute at Lockheed, I'd learned that the most dangerous people aren't your obvious enemies. They're the ones who smile while they're destroying you, using leverage you didn't even know they had. These people weren't Bethany's allies. They were her hostages. "Interesting presentation, Bethany," I said, opening my engineer's notebook with the deliberate calm of someone who's about to drop a tactical nuke. "Now let me share some research of my own." I slid a folder across her glass coffee table, watching her manicured fingers hesitate before touching it. "Your property has several fascinating permit violations I discovered during my evening research sessions. Unpermitted deck addition that's actually quite lovely. Shame it violates setback requirements. Tree removal without forestry approval, which carries some hefty fines if reported. And that decorative fountain? Beautiful craftsmanship, except it's built directly over the septic system easement." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees faster than a Colorado mountain storm. "Meanwhile, Ted, I couldn't help but notice during my due diligence that your business loan application lists Bethany as a co-signer for $30,000. Janet, fascinating that your divorce settlement requires Bethany's approval for any property modifications, almost like she deliberately created dependencies." Ted's coffee cup rattled against its saucer like castanets in an earthquake. Janet looked like she was about to cry with relief that someone had finally said the quiet part out loud. "So here's what's actually happening," I continued, my voice carrying that mountain morning calm that comes from knowing exactly where you stand. "Bethany systematically identifies neighbors with view-adjacent properties. She creates financial leverage through loans, business arrangements, or legal services. Then she uses that leverage to manufacture HOA crises that force property sales at below-market prices." The bitter smell of Bethany's desperation was almost as strong as her industrial-strength perfume, which, by the way, probably violated several chemical weapons treaties. "That's completely ridiculous," she sputtered, but her voice cracked like thin ice over a deep lake. "I'm simply trying to maintain neighborhood standards that protect everyone's investments." "By forcing 4 previous neighbors to sell over the past 3 years," I interrupted. "Aspen Ridge Estates ring any bells? Similar pattern, similar profits, similar victims who were too scared or financially trapped to fight back." Janet Hill actually gasped. Ted Morrison looked like he'd just realized the Titanic was sinking and he'd been sold a ticket to the wrong lifeboat. But here's where your research failed, Bethany. I stood up, closing my notebook with the satisfying snap of precision engineering meeting unbreakable resolve. I'm not some desperate retiree you can intimidate with fake legal threats. I'm not financially vulnerable to your manipulation schemes, and I sure as hell don't need your approval for anything I build on my own property. The silence stretched like piano wire about to snap. My fence stays exactly where it is, protecting exactly what it's supposed to protect. And if you want to keep playing games with people's lives and property rights... I paused at her front door, mountain wind carrying the fresh scent of pine needles and approaching justice. Well, let's just say 40 years of solving impossible engineering problems taught me how to deliver exactly what people ask for, whether they really want it or not. 3 days later, Bethany brought out the big guns, lawyers with hourly rates that could fund a small country's defense budget. A thick envelope from Morrison, Bradley & Associates, property law specialists, arrived via certified mail. The paper's so expensive it probably had its own trust fund. 15 days to remove my fence or face significant financial damages and court costs for unreasonable interference with neighbors' property enjoyment. The legal letterhead had that particular aroma of desperation mixed with billable hours, ode to intimidation at $300 per threatening paragraph. But here's the beautiful thing about 40 years of government security clearance: you collect some interesting contacts. That evening, I made a few calls to former colleagues who'd transitioned into private consulting. Amazing what retired aerospace engineers can dig up when someone threatens their morning coffee ritual. By sunrise, I had Bethany's complete financial autopsy spread across my kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. Turns out our neighborhood terrorist had quite the track record. Aspen Ridge Estates wasn't just similar, it was her exact blueprint copied and pasted. 6 families destroyed over 8 years through systematic financial manipulation. Elderly couples bankrupted by fabricated violations. Young families crushed under manufactured legal fees. A disabled veteran whose accessibility ramp was declared architecturally incompatible with community standards. Each victim followed the same nightmare: identify vulnerable property owners near premium view lots, create financial leverage through loans or legal services, manufacture HOA crises, force panic sales at 40–60% below market value, flip properties for massive profits. But the most delicious discovery was her current situation. Miss $1 Million View was drowning in $800,000 of debt from a failed luxury development that had collapsed faster than her fake smile when confronted with property law. She needed my property sold within 6 months or face personal bankruptcy. Her harassment campaign wasn't just spite, it was financial desperation with a countdown timer. That's when her landscaping crew began their accidental terrorism campaign. Leaf blowers mysteriously aimed debris at my memorial garden with sniper-like precision. Sprinkler systems developed convenient malfunctions that turned Sarah's rose bushes into unwilling participants in Bethany's water torture program. The soundtrack to my morning coffee became the aggressive whine of pressure washers aimed at my workshop windows, mixed with the bass-heavy throb of her new outdoor sound system during exercise classes that looked more like interpretive dance performed by someone having a seizure. You know what separates good engineers from great ones? We document everything like our lives depend on it, because sometimes they do. My security cameras captured every accident with HD clarity. Audio recordings preserved each coordinated harassment session. Legal journals logged timestamps, weather patterns, and witness statements with the same obsessive precision I'd once used tracking missile guidance systems. The breakthrough came when my cameras caught pure gold. Bethany directing her landscaping crew like a general commanding troops. Clear audio of her instructing workers to dump the debris right along his property line and make sure that pressure washer noise carries to his kitchen window during breakfast. She'd just handed me evidence of deliberate harassment that would make a prosecutor's career. During my Air Force days, I learned that intelligence gathering is like archaeology. You dig until you find the foundation, then you keep digging until you understand what built it. A few more calls revealed that Bethany's real estate license was under state investigation for ethics violations. Seems multiple former clients had filed complaints about undisclosed conflicts of interest and financial manipulation tactics. Amazing how responsive state licensing boards become when someone with government connections files detailed complaints with supporting documentation and witness statements. The next morning brought unexpected reinforcements. Ted Morrison appeared at my door looking like a man who'd rediscovered his backbone in the clearance aisle of human dignity. "Marcus, you need to know something," he said, voice shaking with equal parts fear and righteous anger. "This debt thing isn't just me. She's got financial hooks in half the neighborhood. Janet's divorce settlement requires Bethany's approval for any property changes. The Hendersons owe her for business startup costs. Even Mrs. Patterson's reverse mortgage application went through Bethany's consulting services." The scope hit me like a systems failure cascade, when one component breaks and triggers a domino effect that destroys everything downstream. Bethany wasn't just targeting me, she was running a neighborhood-wide financial manipulation network that would make organized crime jealous. While she directed today's harassment opera outside, featuring a cement mixer positioned for maximum audio assault, I was inside researching something that would end this war permanently. Because here's what 4 decades of aerospace engineering teaches you. When someone demands you tear down your defenses, the optimal solution is giving them exactly what they asked for, just not in the format they expected. I began researching transparent barrier materials, government surplus acquisition procedures, and something called aesthetic compliance through innovative engineering solutions. Bethany wanted an unobstructed view? Fine. I was about to engineer her the most spectacular, profitable, and utterly inescapable view in Colorado history. Week 3 brought the dawn of social media psychological warfare. Pine Ridge Valley Community Standards appeared on Facebook like a digital plague, with Bethany crowning herself administrator of a group dedicated to preserving our neighborhood's premium character and safety. Within hours, she'd recruited 23 members, mostly people who owed her money or desperately needed her real estate services. The posts started innocently. Sunset photos captioned, "Maintaining our community's visual harmony," and "Protecting property values through neighbor cooperation." Then came the character assassination campaign. Telephoto lens photos of my fence appeared with captions like, "Selfish neighbors destroying million-dollar views," and "Antisocial behavior threatening community cohesion." My personal favorite was her post claiming my workshop activities were suspicious late-night noise that constituted potential safety hazards for neighborhood families. The woman had weaponized neighborhood gossip and social media algorithms into a precision harassment tool. I had to admire the psychological warfare tactics, even while planning to destroy her with engineering precision. But here's the thing about digital warfare. It creates evidence. Screenshots of her posts, timestamps of coordinated harassment, IP tracking of fake accounts she'd created to support her own narrative. Every Facebook rant was another nail in her legal coffin. More importantly, her online desperation revealed something critical: financial panic. A little deeper research into her business filings revealed the ugly truth. Bethany's luxury real estate empire was collapsing faster than a house of cards in a hurricane. Market downturns had crushed her high-end investments. Her signature development project had defaulted when investors discovered her creative accounting methods made Enron look conservative. She'd already spent advance money from my projected property sale to cover immediate loan payments. Her bankruptcy filing deadline wasn't months away. It was 59 days and counting. Bethany wasn't just harassing me for better views. She was fighting for financial survival, and my property was the only thing standing between her and complete ruin. That morning's harassment featured her most creative effort yet, a mariachi band for her cultural appreciation wellness session at 7 a.m. sharp. The sound of trumpets, guitars, and accordions echoing off mountain peaks while she performed interpretive dance moves that looked like aggressive bird-mating rituals was so spectacularly absurd it achieved a kind of performance art status. The smell of mountain pine mixing with the confused sweat of underpaid musicians created an olfactory experience that should be studied by scientists. But while Bethany conducted her musical assault on sanity, I was in my workshop making a discovery that would change everything. Buried in 1952 original property surveys, documents so old they smelled like legal history and broken dreams, I found something beautiful: utility easements that predated current zoning laws by 7 decades. Easements that extended 12 feet onto what was now Bethany's million-dollar property. Her house foundation, circular driveway, imported Italian landscaping, and that ridiculous fountain, all built directly on my legal easement rights. For 4 years, she'd been trespassing on my property with $340,000 worth of improvements, legally owing me retroactive usage fees that would make a loan shark weep with envy. The implications hit me like a systems failure revelation. I could charge her monthly easement access fees, demand property restoration, or, and this was the engineering beautiful part, build whatever I wanted along the easement boundary to protect my utility rights. I immediately called my former defense contractor contacts. Government surplus acquisition isn't just about getting deals. It's about accessing materials that civilians never see, like transparent aluminum panels originally designed for military vehicle armor and spacecraft windows. "Marcus, you beautiful bastard," laughed Jim Rodriguez, my old Lockheed supplier. "You want ballistic rated clear panels? I've got 60 linear feet of NASA-grade transparent armor sitting in a warehouse, surplus from a canceled Space Force project. Stronger than steel, clearer than optical glass, and about as legal as baseball and apple pie." Within hours, I had specifications for materials that would make the Pentagon jealous. Transparent barriers that exceeded every building code while technically counting as utility protection infrastructure, rather than visual obstruction. That evening, while calculating tourism revenue potential for unique architectural attractions, my phone rang. "Mr. Delacroix? Detective Sarah Lane, Financial Crimes Division. We've received multiple complaints about systematic real estate fraud in Pine Ridge Valley. Your name came up as someone who might have relevant documentation." My 4 weeks of obsessive evidence collection, recordings, photographs, financial records, timeline analysis, had attracted law enforcement attention. Bethany's pattern of creating financial dependencies and forcing property sales was starting to look less like aggressive business tactics and more like organized criminal enterprise. After an hour of sharing evidence that read like a prosecutor's Christmas wish list, I hung up feeling like justice was finally loading into the launcher. Outside, the mariachi band had finally surrendered to mountain silence. Bethany's kitchen light burned late into the night, probably planning tomorrow's creative harassment schedule. What she couldn't possibly know was that I'd just engineered a solution that would give her exactly what she'd demanded: the most transparent, unobstructed, and profitable view in Colorado history, starting with her first monthly rent payment. The breakthrough came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, buried in county records that smelled like dust, forgotten legal battles, and the dreams of dead bureaucrats. I'd been cross-referencing original property surveys with current zoning maps, fueled by black coffee and the kind of methodical rage that only comes from watching someone try to destroy your dead wife's memorial garden. That's when I found it. A 1952 utility easement document that made my hands shake with something between fury and vindication. Bethany's entire property empire was built on my land. Not metaphorically, not technically, literally sitting on 12 feet of utility easement that belonged to me. The original survey maps, yellowed with age and bearing the signatures of engineers who'd built half of Colorado, showed clear boundaries that made my heart rate spike like a rocket engine ignition sequence. Her house foundation, circular driveway, imported Italian landscaping, and that ridiculous fountain that probably cost more than my annual aerospace pension, all squatting on my legal property like expensive trespassers. For 70 years, this easement had been valid but unenforced, quietly waiting for someone with enough engineering background and pure spite to understand its implications. I spread the documents across my kitchen table where Sarah and I used to plan garden expansions, cross-referencing property deeds and survey measurements with the obsessive precision of debugging a life support system. Every calculation confirmed what my engineering instincts had suspected. Bethany had been unknowingly committing property theft for 4 years. At current market rates, she owed me approximately $28,000 in retroactive easement usage fees, plus $1,200 monthly going forward. But here's where it gets absolutely beautiful. If she refused payment, I had legal authority to demand restoration of the easement to original condition, which would require demolishing her driveway, relocating her landscaping, and potentially undermining her house foundation. The woman threatening my financial ruin was sitting on a legal nuclear bomb that I could detonate with a single certified letter. Outside, the pre-dawn mountain air carried the scent of pine needles and approaching justice while I researched the perfect solution: transparent security barriers. The genius of clear materials in easement disputes is they demonstrate property authority while maintaining visual compatibility with zoning requirements. I could build a 60-foot transparent wall exactly along the easement boundary, proving my dominance while technically giving Bethany her precious unobstructed view. My aerospace contacts revealed something even better. The Defense Logistics Agency had surplus transparent aluminum panels from a canceled Space Force project, materials designed for spacecraft windows and armored vehicles, available at 60% below commercial pricing to qualified contractors. Stronger than steel, optically perfect, and completely legal for utility infrastructure protection. But the real revelation came when I calculated tourism potential. A transparent wall with viewing platform would create Colorado's first mountain vista observatory, turning Bethany's harassment into a profitable architectural destination. Conservative projections, $60,000 annual tourism revenue, plus mandatory easement fees that would make this the most expensive view in state history. For her, not me. The psychological warfare was exquisite. She'd demanded transparency. I'd build transparency so complete that her every outdoor activity would become paid entertainment for tourists learning about the Great Pine Ridge Fence War. Morning coffee, gardening sessions, dramatic lawyer phone calls, all performed under interested observation of paying customers enjoying premium mountain vistas while learning why you shouldn't mess with aerospace engineers. The easement revenue would fund community improvements, playground equipment, senior services, and a legal defense fund protecting future harassment victims. Her bullying campaign would become permanent neighborhood benefit while she paid monthly rent for the privilege. That morning, while she conducted her daily harassment concert featuring leaf blowers and creative landscaping positioned for maximum noise pollution, I began drafting permits for a transparent utility protection barrier with integrated mountain observation platform. Bethany had demanded I tear down my defenses for her million-dollar view. Instead, I was building her the most expensive monument to poor decision-making in Colorado history, one she'd be financing monthly whether she liked it or not. The engineering phase began at sunrise with the kind of systematic precision that had once guided missiles to their targets. Except this time, the target was one very specific neighbor who'd made the fatal mistake of threatening a dead woman's roses. I cleared my workshop table where Sarah and I used to plan weekend projects, spreading out architectural drafting paper that crinkled like fresh snow under my calloused hands. The morning light streaming through my windows hit those white sheets with the same clarity I was about to build. 60 feet of transparent justice disguised as property improvement. The scent of coffee mixed with pine sap and the satisfying smell of revenge planning filled my workshop while I designed something that would make NASA engineers weep with envy. This wasn't just construction, it was psychological warfare with building permits. Using principles from spacecraft observation modules, I designed a curved, transparent wall following the exact easement boundary. The curve would create an amphitheater effect, focusing attention on Bethany's backyard like a magnifying glass concentrating sunlight. Every outdoor activity would become an unwilling performance for paying audiences. The genius was in the legal classification. Transparent utility protection barrier with integrated wildlife observation platform. Not a fence. Infrastructure. Not visual obstruction, community enhancement. Materials acquisition felt like Christmas morning for engineers. My old Lockheed contact, Jim Rodriguez, had connections that made government surplus shopping feel like having insider information on the world's best-kept secret. "Marcus, you beautiful genius," he laughed over secure phone lines. "I've got 48 panels of transparent aluminum from a canceled International Space Station project. These babies are rated for micrometeorite impacts and can stop rifle rounds while maintaining 99.8% optical clarity. Here's something most people never know. The Defense Logistics Agency liquidates millions in surplus materials annually to qualified civilian contractors. You just need proper end-use certificates and the patience to navigate bureaucratic paperwork that would challenge a NASA mission planner. The payoff? Military-grade materials at 60% below commercial pricing. Each panel measured 10 feet by 12 feet, engineered to interlock with the precision of Swiss watchmaking. No heavy machinery required, just systematic assembly using principles that had once built rocket engines in aerospace clean rooms. The legal framework required surgical precision. Janet Morrison, construction attorney and Ted's recently liberated cousin, crafted permit applications that were masterpieces of bureaucratic poetry. Every phrase carefully chosen to make challenges impossible, while driving Bethany toward the nervous breakdown she so richly deserved. Height justified as protection from falling trees. Viewing platform serving legitimate community interest in mountain vista preservation and nature education. Transparent materials maintaining neighborhood aesthetic compatibility, while demonstrating innovative property security solutions. The revenue projections read like a business plan written by someone who understood both engineering and human psychology. Colorado attracts 86 million annual visitors, many seeking unique architectural experiences. A mountain vista observatory offering unobstructed Rocky Mountain views would become an instant destination. $25 for basic platform access, $75 for guided photography during golden hour, $200 for exclusive sunset experiences that would book months in advance. Conservative estimates, 2,400 annual visitors generating $63,000 in tourism revenue, plus $14,400 in mandatory easement fees from Bethany. Total annual income, $77,400. The project would pay for itself within 8 months while funding permanent community improvements, playground equipment, senior services, and a legal defense fund protecting future harassment victims. Bethany's campaign of terror would literally finance protection against future neighborhood terrorists. The construction timeline was calculated for maximum psychological devastation. Installation during peak real estate season would make her property progressively unsellable while generating media attention, attracting early tourists to witness her public humiliation. But my favorite detail was the integrated sound system for nature education programming. Hidden speakers would provide commentary on mountain wildlife while accidentally narrating whatever drama unfolded in Bethany's fishbowl backyard. Here we observe the territorial behavior of the rare Colorado Karen, exhibiting classic harassment patterns while remaining oblivious to the legal quicksand beneath her designer landscaping. Technical specifications read like classified aerospace documentation. Panels engineered for 200 mAh winds, thermal expansion coefficients maintaining perfect clarity through extreme temperature variations, and structural integrity that would survive direct lightning strikes. The installation required no foundation on Bethany's side. Panels supported entirely from my property using load distribution principles that had once stabilized rocket launch platforms. Wednesday morning, while Bethany conducted her harassment orchestra featuring jackhammers and aggressive hedge trimming, I submitted final permits. The county inspector approved construction plans that would transform her bullying into my retirement fund. That afternoon, I received official authorization to build the most expensive view in Colorado, one that Bethany would finance monthly while providing premium entertainment for tourists learning why aerospace engineers should never be underestimated. The concrete truck arrived Monday morning carrying materials for the foundation that would support 60 feet of transparent karma. Bethany's kitchen window faced my construction site directly. I calculated she'd have front row seats to watch me build the monument to her own stupidity. The only question was whether her inevitable meltdown would be entertaining enough to justify selling premium viewing tickets for the show. Monday morning brought the sweet sound of concrete trucks rumbling up my driveway at precisely 7 a.m., the same time Bethany usually started her harassment symphony. The look on her Botoxed face when she saw 3 cement mixers, a crane truck, and a crew of construction workers wearing hard hats that read, "Government Contractor, Authorized Personnel Only," was worth every penny I'd spent on this project. She burst out of her McMansion in designer pajamas that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments, screaming about illegal construction and violations of neighborhood standards, while her hair looked like she'd been struck by lightning. "You can't just build whatever you want," she shrieked, waving her manicured hands at the construction crew like she was conducting an orchestra of outrage. "Actually, ma'am," replied the foreman, a grizzled veteran named Frank who'd built half the military installations in Colorado, "all permits are in order. This is a federally approved utility protection barrier using surplus government materials." The way she stumbled backward when he mentioned federally approved was pure poetry in motion. But Bethany wasn't about to surrender without a fight. Within an hour, she'd called every authority figure in her contact list. County building inspectors, HOA lawyers, and what sounded like a direct line to the mayor's office based on the entitled tone echoing from her kitchen window. The county building inspector arrived at 10:30 a.m., clipboard in hand and wearing the expression of someone who'd rather be anywhere else on a Monday morning. Bethany stood behind him like a Victorian duchess expecting her servants to fix an unpleasant situation. "Ma'am, I've reviewed all the permits and construction plans," Inspector Rodriguez explained patiently. "This is a legitimate security enhancement project using approved materials and meeting all safety requirements." The mini-twist came when Rodriguez walked the construction site and started asking technical questions about the transparent aluminum panels. "Sir, are these the same materials they use on military vehicles?" he asked, running his hands over the smooth surface with obvious appreciation. "Better," Frank replied. "These are space station grade, designed to stop micrometeorites while maintaining perfect optical clarity. Rodriguez's entire demeanor shifted from bureaucratic inspection to genuine fascination. Turns out he was former Air Force, and the technical specifications of my materials made him forget all about Bethany's complaints. "This is incredible engineering," he told me, ignoring Bethany's increasingly hysterical demands for immediate construction cessation. "Mind if I bring some colleagues by to see this? We don't get many projects using aerospace-grade materials in residential applications." By noon, Bethany had escalated to threats of federal intervention, claiming my materials violated dual-use technology restrictions and constituted potential weapons stockpiling. The woman was so desperate she'd started inventing laws that didn't exist. The real entertainment began when she tried bribing my construction crew. I watched from my workshop window as she approached Frank with what looked like a thick envelope, whispering urgently while glancing around like a drug dealer making a street corner transaction. The mountain air carried just enough of her conversation for me to hear phrases like "accidentally damage" and "worth your while," and Frank's response was loud enough to wake hibernating bears. "Ma'am, are you attempting to bribe federal contractors working on a permitted government materials project? Because that's a felony." The silence that followed was so complete you could hear pine needles falling in the national forest. Bethany retreated to her house faster than a rocket achieving escape velocity, slamming her door so hard it rattled windows 3 houses away. That afternoon brought the media attention I'd been hoping for. A local news crew arrived to cover the innovative residential security project using military surplus materials. The reporter, a sharp young woman named Lisa Lane, immediately grasped the human interest angle. "So you're telling me this transparent wall will actually improve the mountain views while providing security?" she asked, camera rolling as Frank explained the technical specifications. "Exactly," I replied, keeping my tone professional while Bethany's kitchen curtains twitched frantically. "It's a win-win solution that demonstrates how government surplus materials can benefit civilian communities." What I didn't mention on camera was the monthly rent Bethany would be paying for the privilege of living next to this architectural marvel, or how her harassment campaign had inspired the entire project. The evening news segment aired at 6 p.m., featuring stunning footage of the partially completed transparent wall catching sunset light like a prism while framing the Rocky Mountains beyond. The reporter described it as an innovative approach to residential security that maintains natural beauty. Bethany's property was clearly visible in every shot, her house looking small and petty beside the engineering marvel rising next door. My phone started ringing with calls from tourism boards, architectural magazines, and engineering firms interested in similar projects. The economic impact projections I'd calculated were already proving conservative as media attention attracted advance bookings for viewing platform access. But the most satisfying call came from Detective Lane of the Financial Crimes Division. "Mr. Delacroix, we've finished reviewing the evidence you provided. We'll be executing search warrants on Ms. Cromwell's financial records tomorrow morning. Thought you should know there might be some additional activity in your neighborhood." Tomorrow morning was going to be very interesting for one particular neighbor who'd made the mistake of picking a fight with someone who documented everything and had friends in law enforcement. Tuesday brought sirens at dawn and the most beautiful sight I'd seen since Sarah's last spring garden, 2 unmarked cars and a financial crimes unit van parked in Bethany's circular driveway. Detective Lane knocked on my door at 6:45 a.m., badge gleaming in the morning light and carrying a folder thick enough to stop bullets. "We're executing search warrants on the Cromwell property today," she explained quietly. "Based on your documentation and our investigation, we have probable cause for charges including real estate fraud, financial extortion, and racketeering. Thought you'd want to know, things might get interesting." Through my kitchen window, I watched Bethany's perfect world collapse in real time. Agents in windbreakers marked financial crimes, carried out boxes of documents while she stood on her imported Italian patio in a silk bathrobe, her face cycling through disbelief, rage, and dawning terror like a broken slot machine. Her lawyer arrived within an hour, the same expensive suit who'd threatened me with legal destruction just weeks earlier. Watching him try to explain why his client's files were being seized while she screamed about illegal persecution was better entertainment than cable television. But Bethany's final desperate measure was still coming. While law enforcement inventoried her financial crimes evidence, my construction crew continued installing transparent panels with Swiss watch precision. Each piece clicked into place with a satisfying mechanical sound that echoed off the mountains like freedom bells. That's when Bethany played her last card: attempted sabotage. Around 2 p.m., while Frank and his crew were at lunch, I noticed movement near the construction site through my security cameras. Bethany crept toward the panel storage area carrying what looked like a crowbar and a bottle of industrial solvent. The mini twist was watching her try to damage materials designed to withstand micrometeorite impacts. She attacked the transparent aluminum panels like a rabid wolverine, prying at joints and pouring solvent on surfaces that had been engineered to survive the vacuum of space. The crowbar bent. The solvent beaded up and rolled off like water on a windshield. The panels remained absolutely pristine. Meanwhile, my security system captured everything in high-definition glory, perfect evidence of attempted property destruction and interference with federally contracted construction. When Frank returned from lunch to find Bethany still attacking his materials with the effectiveness of someone trying to dent diamond with a feather duster, his reaction was magnificent. "Ma'am, you're currently attempting to destroy government property installed under federal contract using materials rated for spacecraft applications," he announced with the patience of someone explaining physics to a toddler. "That's multiple federal charges, including destruction of government property and interference with federal contractors." Bethany's response was a primal scream that sent birds fleeing from trees across 3 counties. The afternoon brought my favorite development: media circus. Word had spread about the Pine Ridge fence war and its escalation to federal investigation. News trucks lined our quiet mountain street like a parade of justice. Reporters competed to interview neighbors about the neighborhood drama that became a federal case. The story was irresistible. Entitled HOA President versus Grief-Stricken Aerospace Engineer, Property Rights versus Harassment, Military-Grade Materials Transforming Conflict into Tourist Attraction. Every interview painted me as the quiet widower who'd been pushed too far by a neighborhood bully, while Bethany appeared increasingly unhinged as agents carried more evidence from her house. But the real entertainment was the community response. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to brought me coffee and sandwiches, sharing their own Bethany horror stories for the cameras. Ted Morrison gave an interview about financial manipulation that should have been titled "How I Got My Soul Back." Janet Hill described years of living in fear while Bethany controlled her divorce settlement. The transparent wall, now 70% complete, caught afternoon light like a crystal cathedral, while reporters filmed segments about innovative conflict resolution through aerospace engineering. Tourism calls flooded my phone. The Colorado Tourism Board requested a meeting about designating the wall as an official architectural attraction. Photography enthusiasts were booking viewing platform access months in advance. My revenge project had become a legitimate business-generating economic development for the entire region. That evening, while Bethany's legal team worked frantically to prevent her arrest, I received the call that made everything perfect. "Mr. Delacroix?" The voice was crisp, official, and absolutely wonderful. "This is Agent Martinez with the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. We've been monitoring the financial investigation and would like to discuss federal charges related to interstate real estate fraud. Ms. Cromwell's activities appear to extend beyond Colorado. Federal charges, interstate fraud investigation, multiple victims across state lines. Bethany hadn't just been terrorizing neighbors. She'd been running a multi-state operation that had finally attracted federal attention. As I hung up the phone, I watched through my transparent panels as Bethany paced her kitchen like a caged animal, her empire crumbling while my monument to engineering justice rose higher with each passing hour. Tomorrow would bring the completion of the wall and the beginning of Bethany's very public reckoning. The only question was whether federal prison jumpsuits came in designer colors. Saturday morning dawned crystal clear, perfect weather for destroying someone's life with precision engineering and legal documentation. The grand opening of Pine Ridge Valley's first Mountain Vista Observatory had drawn a crowd that transformed our quiet neighborhood into something resembling a county fair crossed with a press conference. News trucks lined the street like media vultures circling a story that kept getting better by the hour. I'd planned this event with military precision: neighborhood barbecue, platform demonstration, community celebration, and, if the timing worked out perfectly, front row seats to Bethany's final public meltdown. The transparent wall stood completed, 60 feet of crystal-clear aerospace engineering that caught morning sunlight and threw rainbows across Bethany's property like nature's own spotlight on cosmic justice. Tourists, journalists, engineering colleagues, and half of Pine Ridge Valley mingled around my viewing platform while the smell of barbecue mixed with mountain air and the sweet scent of victory. Ladies and gentlemen, I announced to the gathering of 150-plus people, welcome to Colorado's newest architectural attraction and a demonstration of how aerospace engineering can solve neighborhood disputes. The crowd laughed as I gestured to the transparent wall that made Bethany's house look like it was sitting in a fishbowl at a country fair. That's when Bethany made her entrance. She burst through her sliding patio door like a one-woman hurricane, still in her silk pajamas at 11 a.m., clutching a stack of legal papers that she waved like battle flags. Her voice carried across the mountain air with the clarity of breaking glass. "This is illegal harassment," she screamed at the assembled crowd, agents, and media. "That wall is a violation of my civil rights. I demand immediate removal." Detective Lane, who'd been enjoying a barbecue sandwich while off duty, stepped forward with the patient expression of someone about to enjoy her job immensely. "Ma'am, all construction permits are valid, all materials are legally acquired, and the structure meets every building code requirement," she explained for the benefit of rolling cameras. "However, we do have some questions about your financial activities." Bethany's response was to claim the transparent wall constituted architectural terrorism and invasion of privacy through military weaponization of property disputes. And the crowd's reaction was a mixture of stunned silence and poorly suppressed laughter as she demanded that federal agents arrest me for psychological warfare using government materials. That's when I delivered the moment I'd been planning for months. "Actually, Bethany," I said, my voice carrying across the gathered crowd with engineering calm, "I want to thank you publicly for this opportunity." I pulled out my folder of easement documentation, holding it up like a diploma. "Your demand that I remove my fence led to some fascinating discoveries, like the fact that your house, driveway, and landscaping are built on my property easement. You've been trespassing for 4 years. The silence was so complete you could hear pine needles falling in the national forest. "The monthly easement fees you owe, calculated at fair market value for land usage, total $28,800 in back payments, plus $1,200 monthly going forward. This transparent wall demonstrates the exact boundary of my easement rights while giving you exactly what you demanded, an unobstructed view." I gestured to the viewing platform packed with tourists taking photos. "The best part? This wall generates enough tourism revenue to pay for itself while funding community improvements. Your harassment campaign has created Pine Ridge Valley's newest economic development project." The crowd erupted in applause while Bethany's face cycled through every stage of grief simultaneously. Sheriff Martinez stepped forward, badge gleaming in mountain sunlight. "Ms. Cromwell, you're under arrest for financial fraud, real estate extortion, and conspiracy to commit interstate wire fraud." The handcuffs clicking shut echoed off my transparent wall like the sound of justice being served with aerospace precision. "The monthly rent is $2,400, I announced as federal agents led her away. "First payment is due next Tuesday. Cash, Venmo, or public apologies accepted." The media circus that followed was everything I'd hoped for. Local news, engineering journals, tourism boards, and architectural magazines captured the story of the Pine Ridge fence war that had become a federal case and tourist destination. The viewing platform officially opened with a ribbon-cutting ceremony performed by the mayor, who declared the transparent wall an innovative example of conflict resolution through community benefit. By evening, I'd received calls from 3 other harassment victims wanting to commission similar projects, 2 documentary filmmakers, and the Colorado Tourism Board offering official state attraction designation. But the most satisfying moment came as sunset painted the Rocky Mountains in gold and red, visible through 60 feet of crystal-clear engineering that had transformed Bethany's biggest complaint into my most profitable achievement. The crowd dispersed eventually, leaving me alone on the viewing platform Sarah would have loved, watching stars appear over mountains that belonged to everyone and no one. Bethany's house stood empty and dark behind my transparent wall, a monument to what happens when you pick a fight with someone who builds things that last forever. Tomorrow, the first monthly easement payment would be due. Somehow, I doubted the check would be in the mail. 6 months later, Pine Ridge Valley had transformed from a quiet mountain community into Colorado's most unlikely tourist destination, and I'd gone from grieving widower to accidental entrepreneur running the state's most profitable revenge business. The Sarah Delacroix Memorial Mountain Observatory, named for the woman whose rose garden had started this entire war, generated $127,000 in its first year through viewing platform access, guided photography tours, and educational programs about innovative conflict resolution through aerospace engineering. Every dollar of easement fee revenue, exactly as promised, funded community improvements that would have made Sarah proud. The new playground featured equipment designed by aerospace engineers for safety that exceeded NASA standards. The Senior Citizen Support Program provided free transportation and home maintenance for elderly neighbors. The Legal Defense Fund had already helped 3 families fight harassment from other property bullies. But the crown jewel was the Transparency Scholarship, 3 annual full-ride engineering scholarships for local students, funded entirely by monthly payments from Bethany's property management company. Oh yes, Bethany. Let me tell you how that story ended. Federal fraud charges resulted in 18 months minimum security prison, $340,000 in restitution payments, and forfeiture of assets, including her beloved McMansion. The house was purchased by a property management company that converted it into luxury vacation rentals, specifically marketed to visitors wanting to experience the famous transparent wall up close. The irony was exquisite. Tourists now paid premium rates to stay in Bethany's former house so they could enjoy unobstructed mountain views through the wall she'd tried to prevent. Her kitchen window, the same one she'd demanded better views from, now featured a plaque explaining the history of the Pine Ridge Fence War and its transformation into community benefit. The vacation rental income more than covered monthly easement fees, ensuring my retirement fund would continue growing long after Bethany served her sentence and relocated to a different state where no one had heard of transparent aluminum or aerospace engineers with too much time and zero patience for neighborhood terrorists. The technical innovation had unexpected consequences. My patent application for modular transparent security wall systems attracted interest from municipalities dealing with property disputes. 3 other communities had commissioned similar installations, creating a cottage industry of conflict resolution through innovative engineering. Colorado State University added my project as a case study in their engineering ethics program, teaching students how technical solutions can serve community benefit while delivering precision justice to those who abuse authority. But the personal transformation was more profound than any business success. Sarah's Memorial Garden, now protected by 60 feet of transparent aerospace engineering, had become a pilgrimage site for visitors learning about love, loss, and the healing power of building something beautiful from conflict. The roses she'd planted climbed higher each year, framing mountain views that belonged to everyone. My morning coffee ritual continued in the same spot where this entire story began, except now I was joined by visitors, neighbors, and engineering students who wanted to understand how grief and precision engineering could create something bigger than revenge. The viewing platform hosted astronomy nights, photography workshops, and educational programs about aerospace materials. Children learned about transparency, both literal and metaphorical, while adults discovered that sometimes the best way to handle bullies is to give them exactly what they ask for. The sound of wind chimes Sarah had chosen mixed with voices of visitors from around the world who came to see the wall, stayed for the views, and left understanding that innovation can transform conflict into community benefit. Last month, I received a letter from Bethany, her first contact since federal agents led her away in handcuffs. 3 sentences of grudging acknowledgement that her harassment campaign had created something remarkable, followed by a request that I consider reducing her easement fees once she completed parole. I framed the letter next to Sarah's favorite photograph in our memorial garden. Some monuments to human folly deserve preservation. This morning, as I write this, the transparent wall catches first light and throws rainbows across mountain meadows while early visitors set up cameras for sunrise photography sessions. The monthly easement payment cleared yesterday, right on schedule, funding next year's scholarship recipients who'll study engineering at universities they couldn't otherwise afford. The lesson, if there is one, is simple. When someone tries to destroy what you've built, sometimes the best response is building something even better, something that serves everyone while ensuring the destroyer pays monthly rent for the privilege of witnessing their own defeat.